On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla and EV podcast, I'm joined by perhaps the only person in the Tesla community who pays closer attention to it than I do, Tesla tipster Sawyer Merritt, who I regularly cite on this podcast. We'll talk about how he got into the world of Tesla, what motivates him to do what he does, why he feels Tesla needs to start advertising, and much more. Enjoy. What's happening, friends? Alongside two snoozing puppies, we've got Lily the silly Labrador puppy and Daisy the boxer, both to my left on the couch. My name is Ryan McCaffrey. Welcome to Ride the Lightning, the Tesla and EV podcast for August 10th, 2025. This is episode 524. Well, as I mentioned, if you happen to tune in at the very end of last week's podcast, I mentioned that I was going to be going on vacation with my family. Well, that has happened all this past week. Funny enough, as you hear this now, I'm back. But I was on vacation with my family all this past week as you're hearing this. And so I'm preparing this episode for you in advance, which if you're a regular listener, you know that I do a couple times a year. As you all very well know by now, I'm very, very adamant about making sure that I publish a new episode every single Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. But like any human being, I do need a break from time to time. So I hope you enjoy this episode that I've prepared for you. But either way, I will be back next week at the usual time, same day, with the typical weekly news breakdown and analysis that I do for you. I just want to say that I really appreciate all of you allowing me to step away from the usual format this week to relax with my family. So thank you. Oh, and before I forget, I might be zipping down to Los Angeles again on another brief business trip in just a couple weeks from now in mid-August. So by the time I record next week's show, I should have all of that locked in if it's going to happen. So if it indeed does, I will announce it on next week's episode so that anybody who wants to meet me at the Tesla Diner can meet up with me for a little informal Ride the Lightning listener meetup. And yes, you all know me well enough by now to know that as soon as the subject of going to Los Angeles was brought up, the first thing I thought of was, ooh, I can go to the Tesla Diner again. So stay tuned next week for that. And hopefully with a little bit of notice, unlike the first time I went down there when it was very last minute, spur of the moment thing, hopefully this time, if it works out, some of you in the Los Angeles area might be able to join me. I will say, I'm definitely going to aim for a dinner thing at night so that I can see the diner all lit up with its cool neon lighting and signage. Before I get to the interview with Sawyer Merritt, which, by the way, is 54 minutes long, so it's a good long conversation, and I really hope you'll enjoy it. Just a few quick housekeeping notes. First up, over on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Tesla podcast, this week's Lightning Round, the mini episode that I do every week for the kind folks supporting me at that $10 tier or higher, which is the most popular tier of the Patreon, I've implemented the first, I threatened to do this, and now I'm doing it. It's the first, I guess, until I think of a better name, I'm going to call these the Patreon backer profiles. So I'd put out a note on Patreon saying, hey, I enjoy talking to people about how they got into Tesla, so why don't I start doing that every now and again, not like every week, but maybe once a month on the Lightning Round with Patreon backers. Say, just a little conversation. They can come on the podcast via the Lightning Round and talk about how they got into Tesla. And so the first one of those went up this week. It is with longtime Patreon supporter Joe Edgel. You'll hear about how he got his Tesla rental business started a number of years ago, what it was like buying an original Roadster, which I was actually involved in, and a lot more. So check that out. And if that's not of interest, but you'd still like to support me on Patreon, hey, there are 153 other lightning rounds. There's so many of them up there. if you back me at that $10 tier or higher. If $10 is too much, if you're like, you know what, Ryan, I'll support you, but come on, $10. There's a $5 tier in which you will get early access to each week's episode and an ad-free version of each week's episode. That $10 tier, you still get both of those things, and you also get those weekly lightning round mini episodes. Don't forget as well that if you want to do a once-a-year annual pledge on Patreon, there's a 10% discount for that as well, which is kind of my way of saying thank you for making that 12-month commitment to supporting what I'm doing here on the podcast. Next, this week's episode I want to mention is brought to you in part by Test Bros. They are all about helping their customers customize, protect, and maintain their ride, and they do that by listening to the community and creating products that solve pain points. Some examples over the years with them, because they've been around a while, have been Chrome delete kits. If you're like me, you're old enough to remember when Tesla was trimming all their cars in Chrome. And door button stickers, if you're also old enough like me to remember when the door open button on the Model 3 was literally marked with just a horizontal line. It didn't say anything. Now they've fixed it, but before Tesla fixed it, Test Bros fixed it, and that's kind of the point. They were such problem solvers over there at Test Bros that Tesla themselves later added both of those things, Chrome delete and door button stickers, to the cars as standard. These days, Test Bros is selling really great do-it-yourself wrap kits designed in-house by the company itself, which is founded and staffed by Tesla owners, giving you an affordable way to customize your Tesla at home without having to bring it to a detailer. Everything is made in the USA and shipped from their Chattanooga, Tennessee warehouse, and their kits include everything you need for installation: pre-cut film, squeegees, prep solutions, microfibers, wrap gloves, heat gun, and more. They offer in-house support if you need it, and step-by-step video courses. To see everything they've got, go to testbros.com and use the code POD15 for 15% off of your first order. That's TESBROS.com and use code POD15 at checkout. And of course, as always, my friends at XCare have your back with their extended warranty for your EV. These folks have been at it for a while. They recently celebrated their 10th anniversary just before I celebrated mine. And the XCare folks, they're not thinking outside the box with their extended warranty for your EV. They've crushed and disassembled the box and built a geodesic dome instead, because that is how innovative organizations do it. They developed XCare, which is a comprehensive extended warranty designed exclusively for EVs. They also re-engineered the customer experience, because we all know how bad that can be. So you want to cover your car past the manufacturer's warranty, XCare is the way to do it. And the nice thing is the plans are totally customizable, whether you just want to add, 2 years and 20,000 miles, or I have a 3-year, 40,000 mile plan on our 2018 Model 3 Performance, all the way up to an extra 10 years and 125,000 miles, or anything in between. Whatever you want to do, you can do it with XCare. Also, if you just want to cover your high voltage battery and drive unit, since they're the most expensive components of the car, if anything goes wrong with them, your vehicle may qualify for that coverage as well. Best of all, because you're a Ride the Lightning listener, you get $100 off when you select XCare's one-time payment option by using the discount code LIGHTNING. Go to xcare.com. That's XCARE.com. All right, it is now time for the main event this week, my 54-minute conversation with Tesla tipster Sawyer Merritt. We recorded this fairly recently. In fact, if you listen closely in the interview, there is a giveaway as to exactly when we recorded this. Spoiler, it was the day after the most recent earnings call. So just 2-3 weeks ago that was. So we had a great time talking. I personally I've met him a couple times, and I've interacted with him on social media, on X, but I've never really sat down to get to know him a little bit. So this was as fun for me as I hope it will be fun for you to listen to. This is Sawyer's definitely one of the more active and prominent and I think positive people in the Tesla community. And I just had a really good time doing this. So take a listen, enjoy, 54 minutes long, and then I'll be back afterwards with your Tesla Pro Tip of the Week and all that stuff. So for now, enjoy the conversation.
Hi, this is Franz von Holzhausen, and you're listening to Ride the Lightning with Ryan McCaffrey, the Tesla unofficial podcast.
My guest this week is a gentleman that I've had the privilege of meeting a couple times in real life. You may have seen him online. You've definitely heard him referenced repeatedly on this podcast, especially over the last few years. I call him the Tesla tipster, and I'll have to ask him what he calls himself, how he describes his own job. Sawyer Merritt is my guest this week. Sawyer, good to see you, sir.
All right. Thank you for having me. I've been listening to your podcast for years, and it's cool to finally be on it.
Well, I appreciate you making the time because, yeah, you've really kind of come on the scene strong in the Tesla space. I mean, I've been at this podcast now. Actually, when this airs, we're recording it a little ahead of time, but when this airs, I'll just past my 10th anniversary. And it's funny, the sourcing for this podcast has evolved and changed over the years. People that I sorted in the people that I sourced. My goodness, my brain rebooted there. Early on, or they come and go, and yeah, you've now built yourself up into quite the reliable news poster, and as I call you, the Tesla tipster. So let's start there. Like, how would you describe what it is you do in the Tesla community?
Yeah, it's evolved maybe a little bit over the time, but I think a lot of people like to label me as a Tesla influencer, but I never really started doing what I do to influence people so much. It was more to inform people. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to call me the informer, a Tesla informer or whatnot, but I really just try to report on a company that I fell in love with, a decade or so ago. And I really believed in its mission. And I felt like in 2020, when I started, actually, this is probably almost a 5-year anniversary since I started posting.
Nice.
I started with roughly 400 or 500 followers back in early to mid 2025. And I was like, I feel like there's not enough daily coverage of Tesla news and what's going on with the company directly on X. There were a lot of obviously EV blogs.
Sure.
You had to read through a lot of fluff oftentimes, and you have to go externally to a different site. I wanted to be the go-to place for minute-to-minute news directly on X, right to the source. So I just started doing it, and it kind of just grew from there.
Yeah, without having and what I appreciate about your feed is that, as you said, it is just cutting right to the chase, because some of these blogs, it's like, here's the author's take on just something that they pulled from a post on X already. Yeah. So it's just sort of, it's that kind of clickbait, just need to get the ad revenue thing.
When I first started reading EV blogs, a decade ago, they never used to source or talk about X posts or Twitter posts at the time. Yeah. And now a lot of the news actually, I find, comes from X, Twitter itself, more so than, let's say, exclusive reporting from a blog.
Yeah, agreed. It's really interesting how the social media overall has evolved in these last 4 or 5 years in particular, but yeah, X in particular, and particularly obviously with Elon owning the platform now, it's really kind of focused in as a Tesla news source, whether it's people like Elon posting, or Max de Ziegler from the charging team, or some of these other Tesla employees that we've finally started to see people besides Elon start to get a little more active on X too, which I think has been really beneficial to the Tesla community.
Yeah, I think so too. Back when I first started doing it, there really wasn't much interaction between the community and Tesla, executives or employees. Elon was always sort of active on the platform, but once Elon bought Twitter, things sort of changed on that front. I think for the better. I think we've gotten more transparency from the company just in general. We get to, go right to the source on the people working on these products and services, and we can just ask them questions directly. And it's even allowed me to just directly talk with some of the executives right through DM even, and sort of develop relationships that way. So it's been a pretty cool ride the last 5 years or so.
So is this your day job at this point? Or if not, I don't know if you want to share what else you kind of get up to.
Yeah, so I do this full time now. It pays well enough now. And that probably started like maybe 2-ish years ago. I was running my own sustainable clothing company at the time, which has since shut down. My twin wanted to do something else, so we just sort of decided to shut it down. But yeah, this is full time now.
Wow, that's since the creator payout stuff started on X, I guess, right? That's kind of a primary.
Never in a million years did I think Elon, when I started this, Elon would buy Twitter and then he would enable me to make a full-time income from this. I never imagined I would be able to make any money from this. That was never the goal.
No,
it was really just to share the cool things I felt like what was happening at the company, and so more people would know about it.
Well, it's like, with me with this podcast, I started it because I just couldn't contain my enthusiasm for what the company was up to and the cars that they were building. And my wife was sick of hearing me talk about it in the house. So like, well, what outlet do I have? Oh, I can just talk into the internet and then having it turn into, Elon interview, Franz, Lars, all these guys. It's just kind of strange, the twists and turns that these things can take, that we just start doing out of our shared enthusiasm for what's going on out there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What would you describe as do you even have set hours? Like, you're not 9 to 5ing this thing.
No, in the last 5 years, I've probably taken maybe a total of 6 or 7 days off. 5 of that for my wedding this past May. It's a 7-day thing, pretty much from when I wake up to I go to bed really late, like maybe around 3 a.m.
Wow.
Oftentimes, yeah, I'm a late sleeper, or rather a late waker. But that's just how I've always done things. So yeah, it's 24/7 really. That writing the post isn't the tiring part. It's keeping your finger on the pulse of everything constantly. And it's so easy to get outside of the loop. When I was getting married in May, I told myself, all right, I'm not going to check X for 5 days for the first time in like half a decade. I'm going to be disciplined about this. It's my wedding. I got to do it. And I found myself just like come back 5 days later, so out of the loop already, just from a few days of being off of it. So you really have to stay on top of everything to be able to cover everything accurately and know everything.
Did any members of the wedding party, like, your parents, her parents, your bride to be, did anybody like have to take your phone away from you to make sure that you stayed locked in?
Fortunately, no. I had enough self-discipline to not need that.
Oh, because you mentioned staying up late. Like you're on the East Coast, if I recall, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Which means, Tesla is largely out west, whether it's obviously Austin and what's going on in at Giga Texas and company headquarters, but obviously we got a lot of activity still out here in California too. So you almost have to keep West Coast hours to an extent, I would imagine.
No, I do. And I found that to be quite difficult over the years, especially, a lot of events and stuff, they take place either in Austin, Texas now, and sometimes California with the We Robot event. But that's sort of always been a struggle for me. A lot of the people that do cover Tesla and like EVs, and a lot of them are based out of California. So it is a little difficult to sort of balance all that, but I get it done.
Was there a moment where you kind of like a light bulb went off, where you were like, you know what, this is, because like you said, you started in 2020 with 400 or 500 followers, and then you decided to just try to start to keep up with everything and have the account be super active and making this real time tracking of what's going on in the Tesla verse. Was there a moment in time that like a light bulb went off and you went, oh no, this is like turning into a bigger thing than I could have ever anticipated?
Yeah, it probably was only like a month or so into it. And when they announced their first ever stock split, and I was covering that, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of interest in this. And I was like, this is interesting. And then the follower count kind of started to blow up from there. And then, of course, the S&P inclusion stuff happened, and that just sort of made things even crazier.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's, the other product unveils and whatnot. But yeah, it was probably late 2020 where it sort of dawned on me, wow, this is getting pretty crazy. This could grow to something maybe potentially pretty big here.
Now, one thing I appreciate about you on X is that you'll respond to people. Like, you and I have had plenty of, granted, we know each other a little bit, but because a lot of accounts that are approaching 1 million followers or above that, as you are now on the doorstep of here, it's just a one direction. Like, they just post things, they never respond to anyone, whether it's a brand or even just individual people that, you're not afraid to have a conversation with people. And I'm curious, like, what you probably get a lot of trolls, a lot of Tesla short sellers, I would imagine. Like you probably have to have a pretty thick skin to look at your own mentions every day when you're doing what you do.
You'd be surprised. I struggled with this in the first 2 years. I found myself wading too deeply into, being bothered by what people said about me online and stuff. And I would say things that maybe people disagreed with. But over time, I sort of just started to ignore it. And to this day, I keep my DMs open to everybody. So I talk to even accounts with one follower. I help people with even Tesla service problems sometimes, even though I don't work for the company. And so I've always felt like having an open dialogue with people, especially Tesla community members, helps me not only keep a pulse on what the community feels and is thinking day to day, but it just sort of keeps me in the community as well. I find a lot of these bigger sort of million follower news accounts that cover, whether it be political stuff or whatever, are sort of like businesses almost. Mm-hmm. Whereas I never necessarily looked at myself as that. It was more just like, I'm just a guy here to cover a company and companies rather that I really like. And so I feel like talking to other people that have the similar interests is sort of the thing to do to be able to stay on top of all of it.
Yeah, I mean, you and I do have one thing in common, and that we're both one-man operations. Like there's no team of people. It's like
a lot of people assume there's like interns or other people running my account. Like, no, it's always been me and will only always be me.
Yeah. Are you active in your local Tesla club at all? Just out of curiosity, like the owners clubs?
Yeah, so I've gone to a few meetups with the New England Owners Club. I did actually, a follower of mine who took about a year ago, in March of 2024, he'd just taken delivery of his new Foundation Series Cybertruck. And we had never met each other before in real life, but he was a subscriber. He's like, hey, why don't you take my truck for 4 days and just like live with it and experience it? And I was like, that's a lot of trust for someone just over the internet, their new $100,000 truck. So I took that and I was like, I asked the head of the Tesla Owners Club, hey, do you want to do a meetup with people in New England? And so that's what we set up. And I think 150 people showed up and we just showed people the Cybertruck for the first time. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I had like that exact experience where a listener, Emmett, if you're listening, Emmett, did the same thing in early 24. Just he was going to the Super Bowl in Vegas and he had heard me talking about Cybertruck and said, hey, you want to borrow it? Because he's in the Bay Area. So, yeah, it's the generosity. The internet gets, I won't say a bad rap because there is a lot of vitriol and there's a lot of negativity. But there's a lot of really great people out there that just want to kind of share, again, sharing in this enthusiasm that we collectively have for this stuff, which is... It honestly does help keep me going during the weeks. Again, as you know, I do this. You do what you do every day. I do what I do every week without fail. And like sometimes, would you agree? Sometimes it feels a little like work, right? Like it's not always. You're not always like on cloud nine, feeling amazing. There are times when you'd maybe rather be doing something else.
No, like life can happen. There's certain things that pop up and you're like, I don't want to do this post today. Like, I don't want to be on X today. But I have met a lot of people on X in person and made a lot of actually friends that I've known for years on X. And I even met my wife on X. She DM'd me in late 2020, just saying, hey, I'm a Tesla investor and owner. And it kind of just blossomed from there. And then we got married and, 5 years later. It's pretty wild.
So I love a good love story. If you don't want to get this personal, it's no problem. But I gotta hear more about that if you're willing to share. Because you just went from A to Z and skipped the middle. Like, so how do you make the first move there into X conversation into first date? Like, can you tell me a little bit more about meeting your wife? That's amazing.
I lived in New England, and she was from Santa Barbara, California, so quite a ways away.
Yeah,
and she was the first one that initiated. She just DM'd me, "Hey, I really like your account. I'm a follower and investor." And I hadn't actually revealed my face at that point. I was just had my name, Sawyer Merritt, but I had my profile something else, and so she didn't know what I looked like. But then Clubhouse came around. I remember Elon. Yep. Was invited to do a Clubhouse room, and then the whole community sort of adopted Clubhouse and almost this 24-hour live room. And so I started to use that platform, and then me and my wife, Barbara, we sort of connected on there, started talking a little bit. And then a few months later, I said, hey, why don't you fly out to me? We can just hang out. And I think that was June of 2021. and we sort of decided to make it official there. And it was about maybe 4 months later, I said, what do you think about moving to me, leaving Santa Barbara, warm Santa Barbara, and living with me in New England, cold New England? And she was like, okay. So she quit her job, she sold her Tesla, and she moved to 3,000 miles. Yeah.
So, but how come you didn't just come out to sunny California? What? Who did you guys flip a coin for that? How did that work?
Yeah, so the setup just made more sense where I was. I think she was ready to sort of leave the area.
Yeah.
And a lot of her friends had sort of moved on as well. And
yeah.
My family was based here, and so we kind of just decided here would be better. But we do visit out California a few times a year.
That is amazing. That is an incredible 21st century social media love story.
It really is.
That is so great. I love that. Now, when you're out in the real world, and meeting new people, maybe social circles, parties, whatever, and the inevitable, so what do you do question comes up. How do you answer that? And do you get a lot of like confused looks on faces? Like I'm kind of curious how, people outside of this little, not so little, this bubble that we happily live in, how those people react to what you do.
Yeah, I've always been interested in the creator space, and I noticed, 10 years ago when automotive YouTube channels were getting really, really popular, a lot of the car companies didn't really accept that was sort of a real career path.
Yeah,
and I think as the years have gone on, people sort of understand and accept more that you can actually make money on social media and do it as a full-time, income and career, and so. I guess the younger people react to like, oh, that makes sense. That's cool. And then older people are like, how does that work? But the Tesla community members, I think, understand pretty fully at this point. But most people understand. It's usually the older people that sort of like, how does that work? Yeah.
I always love to ask people that I have on the podcast about their Tesla origin story. Like I've told mine probably too many times.
Sure.
But
yep.
What's yours? Because I know you only just recently bought your first Tesla, right? The new Model Y. So
what's the amount of heat I got for that?
Well, let's start at the beginning. Like, what first got you interested in the company, and had you driven Teslas prior to finally buying yours? Like, give me your Tesla origin story, as like a superhero origin story.
So I first started investing when I was about 19 in 2004, and my first stock was Apple. And then about a year later, I was on my college campus. I was a sophomore at the time. And I saw this cool, like futuristic looking car. And I was like, what is that? And then I thought it was a Karma, but it turned out it was a Tesla. So then I sort of Googled the company a little bit more. And I was like, oh, this is a really cool company. It's a cool mission. And then I think it was the fall of 2015 that I bought my first shares of Tesla. I think it was 4 shares at the time. And I was still so new at investing. My mom was like, I don't know if that's a good investment. And so I ended up selling them. For some reason, I listened to my mom, and I bought them back later, of course. But then the Model X unveil, I think, happened in late 2015. So I watched that a lot.
The launch was in late 2015.
The launch, that was right. Yeah. The launch. I think it was 2012, the original unveiling.
Correct.
So I watched that, and I was like, this is like unlike any other company before. I was watching Elon present. I'm like, this guy is so quirky. Like I love his vision. I love the way he presents. And so from there, I kind of just started following the company. And then my first ever post on Twitter at the time was about Tesla. I think it was on March 31st of 2016, the Model 3 unveil. And I think I said, this is going to be, revolutionary or something along those lines. And so it was kind of just from there, I slowly started to pay more and more attention to the company. I became an investor. I went all in. I put every dollar that I had into Tesla stock in, I think it was September of 2018. I'd been buying up little portions up until that point, but every dollar went in 2018. And to this day, I only own Tesla stock. So,
well, that is definitely a commitment. I am not one to give any sort of financial advice, but that is definitely...
No, I don't recommend people do that. It's legitimately insane to do that, to be honest, but I have an insanely high risk tolerance. So, yeah.
Well, it's funny. You did just remind me, speaking of the Model 3, the day that I picked mine up, in fact, as we're sitting here now, we're a few days away from my 7-year Tesla-versary as an owner. July 29th, 2018, at the Fremont Delivery Hub, where I went to pick up my car, it was like adult Christmas morning. There were all because at that point in time, we're all reservation holders. We'd all been waiting for a couple, for what, almost 2 years at that point.
Yep.
And I remember, they were running behind. They're so busy. So it was about 45 minutes late. I got there in time for my appointment, but had to wait a while. So I was talking to some other people that were also sitting around waiting, and there was a guy who had flown out from Louisiana to pick up his Model 3, and he was going to drive it home. And he said the same thing. He had put everything, and he was a much older guy than you. He had put everything, like all of his money, into Tesla stock. And this was back in 2018. And I still think about that guy every now and again as the stock, we both know how volatile it is, both up and down. I still think about that guy sometimes. Like, I wonder if he's still in, or if he's if he's cashed out, or what he's like. So yeah, you're definitely not the only one to do that, but it does take some guts. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it wasn't until actually 2020 that I drove my first Tesla. It was a Tesla Model Y, I think in late 2020.
Yeah.
But I had driven every Tesla up until the point, I got my own Tesla. But yeah, I just poured every Tesla referral credit I had into the Model Y launch series, and I love it. It's the best car I've ever owned.
Yeah, you went with, if I recall correctly, Stealth Gray, and then did you wrap it?
Yeah, I wrapped it in a Stealth PPF. Yep.
Yeah. And you got some custom wheels on there too, I see on your profile
unplugged
picture
performance
as well.
Wheels. Yeah, it's funny. Ben texted me. He's like, you should get some unplugged performance wheels. Like, I don't want to do aftermarket wheels. Like, I'm not sure about that. But I love them. They're incredible wheels, and they have a great company. I know they do a lot of work with police departments upfitting Teslas and whatnot.
Yep.
So
yeah, Ben's been on here a couple times. I love what those guys are up to. And in fact, again, as we're recording, they just announced a new wheel. Their indestructible wheel with like a removable and replaceable like outer ring if you curb rash, which seems like a super smart thing. And it's like,
that's cool.
I might need to get that for one of the cars, the one that lives outside and has to park on curbs all the time. But yeah, there's it's really, do you ever stop and think about how like just the sort of cottage industry that's sprung up around Tesla that you and I are very much a part of, where it's not, it is a community, but there are, businesses, and there's just, it's just, I don't know. It's fascinating to me to think about how this company and what they're up to has kind of unified and created opportunity for so many people.
I think when you create a brand like Tesla that has such a loyal fan base and with an incredible mission that a lot of people really believe in, I think it's naturally going to create sort of offshoot businesses and, accessory companies and whatnot that sort of go into that ecosystem. And I think it makes a lot of sense, to be honest. I think a lot of people love the brand and want to support it and want to support even companies that surround the brand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it makes sense.
So what, if you didn't own a Tesla until you just got your launch series, new Model Y, what's your car history? Give me the rundown. What have you driven over the course of your adult life?
So I've really only owned 3 cars, I think. The first one was a Honda Ridgeline. I think it was 2007-ish. So I owned a truck people don't really call it a truck, but I'll call it a truck.
Yeah.
And then it was a 2018 Honda Accord, and then I just owned that pretty much up until I got the new Model Y. Yeah, I think a lot of people assume that, why haven't you gotten a Model Y? It just didn't really make sense for me financially. I was running my own company, I was moving and whatnot, so I kind of just waited for the perfect moment, and it was the perfect moment. I had an incredible amount of Tesla credits to be able to use and other things, so it was perfect.
Yeah, they did that. They did that thing with the program where they max out at 10 referrals, but then they like reset it or it rolled over into the new year. So yeah, you played it smart. You sat on them and then you like double stacked it. So it worked out great for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can't beat that. That's some savvy discount purchasing going on right there. Out of curiosity, have you driven any other EVs, any non-Tesla EVs at this point?
Yeah, every time I travel, I try to rent a non-Tesla EV just to see what the competition is up to. Unfortunately, companies like Hertz and Budget, they're getting rid of all their EVs. So it's getting hard to do that. But I have driven a lot of Kia EVs, Mustang Mach-E, others. I haven't driven a Prologue EV from Honda. I want to try that actually, but I do try other EVs when I can. My mom's owned a 2022 Model Y. She bought it brand new a few years ago, so I was able to drive that for quite a bit before I bought my own Tesla actually. But I try to get in other EVs because I feel like it's important to understand what the competition is up to. So
Sure. Yeah. What other EVs are most intriguing to you at this point, whether you've driven them or not?
I find that Kia and Hyundai make some of the best EVs in my opinion. I think GM is actually pretty strong too in some of their, like the Silverado EV actually I think is an incredible EV. I haven't driven it, but I've been really impressed with the range, the charging speeds.
Yeah.
The problem is just a lot of EVs are still just too expensive for most people, and fortunately now they're starting to get access to the Tesla's North American charging standard, the supercharger network, but the experience isn't always the best. Charging can be kind of slow even on Tesla's network with the third-party EVs. So I think ultimately they need to incorporate native NACS, and that'll hopefully improve. But I find that Kia, Hyundai, and probably GM, I think, have the best EVs. If I have to think about it, yeah.
The Equinox from Chevy, they seem to have a little bit of a hit on their hands with that one. I've been seeing a ton of those around. They were near the top of the sales charts that you had posted on your
GM is one of the only few that are actually growing their EV sales, actually. So we bash on them, but they're growing EV sales. So credit to them for that.
Yeah. No, agreed. I don't like. Do you get a ton of Rivians and Lucids out your way in New England?
Yeah, actually, they're a pretty decent amount of Rivians. Lucids are a little bit more rare, but we're in the New England area. We have a house up in New Hampshire, so actually, I see quite a few Rivians up there, and people seem to like them. Yeah,
yeah. Everybody I've talked to loves it. I'm really rooting for them. I mean, they've certainly benefited from being able to follow the path that Tesla really carved out with a lot of difficulty at times, obviously, as we know from following this company as long as we have. But at the same point, Rivian also has a much tougher road because, well, kind of Tesla has set a very high standard that now they have to follow, but to their credit, the R1S seems to be just an absolutely phenomenal vehicle, and they've got a ton of buzz going with R2 and even R3 at this point. So
I really like the Rivian brand. I think they create a great vehicle. Their buyers are loyal, that's for sure. I just feel like, unfortunately, they're just not making money yet. And, even their demand, I think, was down roughly, or at least for some models.
Yeah.
It was down upwards of 50% year over year. I don't know if that's just because of the current climate or what other things, but it's tough out there for the whole EV industry. It's rough.
Yeah, what do you think the solution is? How do we get EVs kind of back towards this path that I think we both agree is that they will inevitably take over?
I think a lot of people for a long time have been arguing, the EV industry doesn't need incentives, but to be honest, I disagree. I think it still does need incentives. Like if you were to buy an EV today, most of them are just still too expensive for most people. So having that $7,500 federal EV credit, I think, was quite beneficial for most people, and helped them get into an EV. And another thing is we're sort of over the point of early adoption, and we're sort of into the point where it's harder to convince the mainstream owner out there to get into an EV. A lot of them are thinking they need to bridge the gap with a hybrid first before they jump into an EV, when really you're probably not going to. A lot of people that even buy plug-in hybrids, they don't even use the electric part. They're just carrying around a dead battery most of the time. So I think there just needs to be a lot better EV education and awareness campaigns out there. And it's specifically with Tesla. I've been quite disappointed with the lack of awareness and education on Tesla's part. I feel like Tesla's sales would be a lot better if more people knew how incredible the products are. But unfortunately, a lot of people just don't know. So I think EV education, awareness, pricing's still an issue, I think. I think there's enough chargers probably at this point. Although if you live in sort of more of an urban area, I do find that a lot of people complain that their apartments don't have chargings. You don't necessarily want to drive far to go supercharge every time. So that's sort of an issue as well.
Yeah, the apartment thing we definitely haven't cracked yet. I had a former Tesla engineer on several years ago at this point. Nicholas, if I recall, is his name. He started a company called Orange. That if you haven't, you might want to just take a look at that when you get a chance, because he's been working on in his company trying to do like an easy, like adaptable infrastructure for specifically for places like apartment buildings. But yeah, you're right. That's definitely one area where if somebody says, "Oh, I'm in an apartment," then it is legitimately tough to recommend an EV with sincerity because unfortunately supercharging has gotten more expensive over these last several years here. It's now, at least in California, pretty comparable to gas. So if you're using it exclusively, you're definitely still getting plenty of EV benefits, like a lot less maintenance, but your fuel costs are still going to be pretty comparable.
Yep.
Yeah, so
I think a lot of people are also still convinced that EVs are worse for the environment overall. I had a friend of mine whose father is quite Republican, but he's more recently actually looked at the Model Y and he thinks he wants to get one. And he said, "I want to get one despite it being worse for the environment." I was like, that's interesting. And I think a lot of people just assume that EVs are worse, but this is another point that I think Tesla just needs to get out there and do more, education because they're much better for the environment over the lifetime of the vehicle, even if the initial emissions are higher from the production.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and I wonder, maybe see what your take is on this. You go back to, you made a great point about how we're past the early adopter phase.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. And I wonder if Tesla is almost kind of still feels like that same tactic of, no, word of mouth will take care of everything, which it does in those early days when you're just getting those early adopters. But I think to break through to that, to sort of leap over that chasm and get to the mainstream, they've got to get out there and get the word out.
I think this is a case of Tesla sort of going all in on AI, robotaxis, and robotics. And my guess is that Elon isn't that much interested in the traditional car auto business anymore in the way he used to be, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And, partially justifiably so. I mean, the robotaxi and the humanoid robot opportunities are much larger opportunities long term. But I think I think they made a mistake not expanding their vehicle lineup more than they have in the last 5 years. There's really only been one new vehicle, and that's the Cybertruck, which isn't selling all that great right now, anyways. So it's kind of disappointing. It sounds like we're gonna get some more affordable models maybe in the coming months, but still, I wish they had come earlier.
Yeah, I mean it goes back to Battery Day, which is, as we sit here, just under 5 years ago. It's almost exactly 5 years ago.
Wow, it's already been 5 years. That's crazy.
Yeah, where they talked about, Elon and the team talked about, by 2030, as you remember, getting to 20 million vehicles per year, because I believe, if I remember this correctly, that would be like 1% of the new cars sold globally every year.
Yep.
And that they would start to make a meaningful dent. Because I'm completely with you on that. I started this podcast in part because I'm a car guy. I always have been. And I love Tesla's cars. And I want to see more of them. And I feel like that the new Roadster may be sort of in this weird, bittersweet, poetic thing. The first car that they make, and then the new Roadster might be the last new model that they ever make. I mean, obviously they're going to continue. They're going to continue to build millions of Model Ys and Model 3s and some S's, X's, and Cybertrucks. But you're right. Like the only two vehicles. Well, three. I mean, although technically one of them's in production, the Semi, but there are only two vehicles on the roadmap right now, and it's the Cybercab, which, okay, we might get a whole bunch of those every year, but they're not going to be in your garage or my garage or most people's garage. And the new Roadster, which I know a lot of people believe that's never coming out, and I can't even argue with them at this point. But if it does come out, that's not going to be in everybody's garage either. So, yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, I just think they could have. I'd love to see the Tesla minivan. I'd love to see the Tesla hot hatch. I'd love to see the Tesla delivery van. I mean, they could have owned that space. Like, there's a lot of opportunity to electrify transport that I don't think it's. I don't know how you feel about this. I was just talking to my wife about this last night, actually. I don't think it's an either or proposition when it comes to autonomy and robotics or cars. I think Tesla has the resources and the talent
Yep.
And quite frankly, they're sitting on what 36 billion in cash or something. They've got everything they need to do all of it. Would you agree?
I do agree. Tesla's sort of in this weird position in that there are these huge opportunities in robotaxi and humanoid robots, but they're not materially impactful to the business yet, and from a financial standpoint and profit standpoint. And so Tesla really does need to continue to make money from a traditional car business to be able to fund their future projects. And unfortunately, they're not having the growth right now that they need.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised, if Tesla needed to raise debt or whatever, maybe even sell some shares. They'd probably do debt if they needed more money for CapEx expenditures and for, AI compute and whatnot. But yeah, we'll see what the new more affordable models do in Q4 when they get unveiled. My guess is that there's sort of going to be a trifecta of Model Ys, or there's going to be the standard Model Y that's already out. There's going to be the Model Y L, that they're sort of calling it, the larger Y. And then my guess is that the third Y is going to be sort of a stripped down version of the current Y that's out.
Right.
I think some people are expecting it to be an actual physically smaller Y. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case or not. But we'll see if that invigorates demand enough to, return to growth. But it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense to double down on the Y. It's been the best-selling car in the world, but
yeah, sure.
But yeah, eventually people want something new, right? Like that's just human nature. People want something new, and I mean you can refresh, redesign the Y every 5 years or whatever, but it's going to be really interesting to see where Tesla is in the next 5 years, because I'll be disappointed if, not that I don't love the company and what they're doing, but I'll be disappointed if there aren't new cars like that we can buy coming up on the horizon in the next.
I will be too, honestly.
Years.
I think there's still a lot of juice left in the auto business that they can, they can grab a lot more market share than they have right now. So I think they should go after it. I think they can do both, as you said.
Getting back to sort of you and what you do here, I was curious, like what. You're typically extremely quick with getting. It's not too often. Like I think I've maybe gotten tips here and there that you have birds as well that whisper things in your ear that I've maybe beat you by a couple minutes here and there, but it's tough. It's tough to beat you to the punch on things. So like, what's your secret to being so quick with your posts and what?
I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people assume I have bots set up or AI scanners or whatnot, but it's actually, I don't have any of that set up. It's strictly a manual process. I just know where to look oftentimes and at what times to look. For instance, like Thursdays are often the times right around 7, 8 p.m. is when they
Design
update
studio updates.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. But their followers also help with this too. If they notice something, they'll tell me or hit me off. There really isn't that much going on in terms of like employees telling me things. I don't like to leak. I did a little bit of that early on, and to be honest, I regret it. And I stopped, 3.5 years ago doing that. So I don't like to do that. But it's really just a manual process. I just check everywhere, ask people, and yeah.
Yeah, didn't Elon like unfollow you at some point because he was mad about something you posted? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, he for 36 hours he unfollowed me and Omar because we had posted an article from The Information that had, I guess, an email, that he had sent out to some employees. So, but he followed back.
Good. Do you set any rules for yourself, like because there's. Like I have a journalism background, so my brain sort of thinks about the content I make in a certain way. But I'm sort of curious with you, like, do you kind of have guidelines in your head where you think like I do or don't want to be political, or I do or don't want to be opinionated, or like what's kind of your posting philosophy, if you will?
I don't want to be a robot, so I do like to, have my own opinions and share them, but I try not to delve too much into politics. I don't like to tell people, who I voted for or what I lean towards politically. And I don't like to tell people, if I bought or sell Tesla stock or anything like that. I don't want people to like sort of follow my lead on that. I just tell people, hey, I'm a Tesla investor. I hold Tesla stock. I also try not to be early on in my sort of post career. I felt I was a little bit too sensationalist, I think, with everything, labeling everything breaking. So I told myself I really want to pare that back.
Yeah.
So I think my breaking posts are down like 70% or something over the last couple of years.
We can ask Grok and we can get an analysis on that.
Yep. So I try to not be too sensationalist anymore. Those are really the only rules, to be honest. I don't know if I really have any other guidelines. I try to be fair where I can be. There is obviously going to be some bias there because I'm a Tesla investor.
Yeah, of course.
Traditionally, like, if you're a reporter at Bloomberg and you report on Tesla, you're not supposed to own Tesla stock.
Exactly.
So this is a little different where we're in the way that we do it on X. But I'm clear with that bias in my bio.
Yeah, that's the thing. As long as you're disclosing it, people know that, okay, well, maybe this guy might be,
Yeah.
influenced to post stuff. I mean, not saying you are, but as long as you're clear about it up front, that's the important thing.
I also try not to overdo it with the amount of posting. I on average, I post about 12 times per day. And I recognize a lot of people probably have my notifications on, because I do breaking news and stuff like that. So I try not to spam people too much. It's going to be different on earnings days and, when there's big news days. But in general, I post an average of 12, 13 times a day.
And how are you good at being able to shut it off when it's like, or do you have like I know you said you stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, but when you're away from it, are you able to kind of just be present in the real world, like with your wife, with your friends, with your family? Because personally, I've found that I need to take breaks from all of social media and usually what I do is on the weekends, I don't post anymore. And that's been really mentally healthy for me, where I am totally offline on weekends. And then during the week, I'm back into it and it's fine. But I'm sort of curious what, how you find it with this, again, by your own words, a 7-day-a-week thing.
Sometimes I find it hard, but to be honest, I'm pretty good at actually just shutting it off and being present in the moment.
Good.
But when I'm on, and it's sort of hard to peel me away from it. But for the most part, I'm good at unplugging when I need to.
And is it still fun for you, or has it gotten to the point where it just feels like it's this monster that has to be constantly fed?
A little bit of both. At times it does sort of feel like, oh, this is a job. But other times I'm like, I do really still love it. I still love the company. I love their products. I love talking about them, and I love interacting with the community to this day. And so, I would say I still really enjoy what I do, to be honest. I think you never know what's going to happen day to day. Elon is literally the most interesting guy in the world. It's just, there really isn't a boring day covering this guy. So,
as somebody that's been doing a Tesla podcast every week for 10 years, I also attest to that. Yeah. Like if I had chosen any other car company to do a weekly podcast about, there'd be some very short episodes quite often, but nope, not this company. There's always plenty of material, which makes it fun.
And the fact that he runs, 5, 6 companies, it just makes it all the more interesting.
Yeah, totally. Now, have you thought about the long-term viability of what you do? Like, have you thought about an end point for either just can't keep doing this or might not want to? Like, who knows what kind of, if you and your wife are planning a family or whatever, like, have you kind of given thought to the medium to long term of this?
I have always understood that this job could be over and gone tomorrow. I've always approached it from that standpoint, and I've always accepted the fact that if I need to, I'll just drop it and go find something else if I need to. Yeah. So I'm not married to the idea that I need to do this forever or long term. I'm just sort of in the mindset of like, I'm just going to do it for now and just see how it goes, and that's sort of been my mindset for the last 2 years. So that's how I'm going to approach it.
That seems healthy. I like that. That's good. Now, as I mentioned earlier, as of this recording, who knows, by the time this airs in a couple weeks, maybe it'll have happened. You're approaching 1 million followers.
Crazy.
So does that mean anything to you? Do you have any fun celebration planned, even if it's just like you and your wife going out to a nice dinner or something? Like, that is a pretty awesome milestone to have very organically built. It's not like you bought a bunch of followers or, it's all organic. So, kind of talk to me about what that does or maybe doesn't mean to you.
I think it really just says, okay, there's enough people out there that find my page or content interesting that they're willing to follow me and follow what I do. The 1 million number, it blows my mind. I never thought I would get to this point. I thought 500, 1,000. When I hit 1,000 followers, I was like, this is crazy. And now here we are, 5 years later, it's almost 1 million. I don't know what that means, but it's mind blowing nonetheless.
Do you ever get to play that fun little card at like parties or social things where I don't know if you ever kind of like just get to just show the phone, show the X account, and do you ever flex with that at all? Is you ever get to use it for fun?
Not really. Sometimes when people ask what I do for a living, I'll tell them that's usually the following question: "What do you do for a living?" And then if I tell them I'm on social media, they're like, "Oh, how many followers do you have?" And then that's when I say it. But I never like say, "Look, ooh, I have 1 million." I feel like it's a cringe flex to do that.
Yeah. No, it's cool, but the humility is certainly never a bad thing with those kind of things. I mean, you've even caught mainstream media's attention in that, like you've been invited on some of these cable news shows to talk about Tesla. So, what is that pretty trippy when you get when somebody reaches out to you and wants to put you on TV?
Yeah, so I consider myself an introvert. So when CNBC reached out a couple of years ago, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, it's going to be on national TV. But Brian Sullivan, he followed me on X, and he was like, this guy is kind of cool. We should bring him on. So I kind of just agreed to it, and I think it went pretty well. But there is a lot of reporters that have reached out, especially when I got invited to the early invite for the robotaxi service. Everybody from CNN, CBS, you name it, reached out to me, and I tend to just ignore most of them. I find that a lot of them, and you can search up their previous article history, but a lot of them have agendas sort of against Tesla, which I don't like. So for the most part, I don't really ever talk to journalists anymore. I kind of just keep to myself and do my own thing.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I've had similar experiences. Speaking of robotaxi, I had our mutual friend Kim Java come on the podcast right after the launch of robotaxi in Austin. You also were on that list of people. You flew down. So it was that must have been a whirlwind 24 to 48 hours for you when you get the invite and decide to just book tickets and scoot down there.
I'd pre-booked everything, but well before they had announced stuff, just on the basis that maybe I get an invite and maybe it'd be on this date, but I made it all refundable. So I did have to change it a couple times, but it was crazy. And in my mind, I'm like, do I really want to spend this much to go ride in the backseat of a car I already own? Like, that seems a bit crazy, but I'm like, this is such an important moment in the company's history. I gotta take part in it. There's only like 20 people, 25 people that were invited. I gotta go down. And so I did. And it was absolutely craziness. The first ride was incredible. It's at the same time, it's mind blowing, but also very uneventful and boring, and in the best way. Like, you're kind of just saying to yourself, "Oh, this is actually like a really normal feeling. This is kind of great." But it was amazing. And I got to meet up with some of the other creators as well, and take part in this incredible moment for the company, and give the company feedback too.
And what's neat is you'll be able to tell that story forever. Like when robotaxi is deployed to the entire fleet and it's a totally normal thing, like that'll always make a fun story where you'll be like, I was one of the first members of the public to get to try this out.
I think all of us looked up the exact times when we took our rides, and I'm pretty sure I was the very first one to actually take the ride, but I think Herbert was the first one to post about it on X. So we had fun about that.
Are you going to put your own Model Y into the robotaxi fleet? Because New Hampshire, you might not have as much competition for rides up there. You might be able to make some good extra cash with your car.
I don't know. I kind of treat my Model Y as my baby. I might buy another. Maybe I'll buy a Cybercab or something and put it into the fleet. But I probably wouldn't put my own Model Y into the fleet. But I would definitely consider buying either the cheaper, more affordable model, whatever that is, or the Cybercab and do it.
A man after my own heart. I'm the same way. I'm way too picky with my own car. I just couldn't do it because you've got to have a level of acceptance of scuffs and scrapes and which I don't have. Do it. I don't have that. So
I'm not strong enough for that.
So not to, as I'm winding down here, I just got a few more questions for you and I can let you go. But I was like, should I ask him this? Because I don't want to have a negative. I don't want to get negative, but I have to ask, given that this is one of Elon's own great interests, are you worried that AI might take your job at some point?
I think I'm a prime job for AI to take. I think honestly, I think AI is going to take so many jobs. My wife, she works in risk at SoFi, and she sort of kind of feels like her job could easily be taken as well. So yeah, I'm fully aware of that fact. I even use Grok and stuff to help me with my job, but at some point, AI will be able to figure out a way to cover Tesla news and do things better than I can. So it's probably inevitable, but for now, I'll keep doing it.
That's it's a pretty level-headed attitude to have. I commend you, sir. What would you like to see Tesla do that they're not doing? I know we kind of maybe hit on this a little bit earlier, but is there anything that you'd like to see them get up to that they're currently not doing?
Yeah. On yesterday's earnings call, Elon had mentioned that 50% of Tesla owners that could try FSD have not tried FSD. To me, that's a pretty mind-blowing stat.
Yeah.
And it's kind of disappointing, honestly, because in my eyes, I use FSD version 13 all the time. And it's an incredible piece of technology. And it does make driving less fatiguing when you're going on those long drives.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, a lot of people just either don't know what the technology is or too afraid to use it. My mom, with her Model Y, when she bought it a few years ago, she bought FSD, but didn't really start using it regularly until about 2 years later. And so I know many other friends too. They were too scared until maybe version 12 or version 13 was good enough to the point where they felt comfortable. But I think Tesla really needs to address, better education on the FSD front. I don't know what the number one issue is. If it's a price issue, if it's an awareness issue, it's probably a combination of, all these things. But I think more aggressive targeting to these people that say, hey, try FSD, maybe even give them longer free trials, whatever. Maybe even lower the FSD price for a little bit just to get them into the door. Because I feel like FSD is a technology that saves lives. And so as many people as possible should ideally use it, right? But they're not. So it would only help Tesla too, train the system. They throw more data into the Cortex, supercomputer. So to me, that's probably the number one thing. The other thing would just be Tesla's products, I think, are the best on the market in terms of, certainly in the EV landscape, but I think in the whole automotive industry. And unfortunately, not enough people know about it. And as we said, address that. I don't know if it's whether it's through paid advertising. I don't think Elon would ever do that. But word of mouth, I don't think alone is strong enough at this point. So they got to get creative.
Hard agree. Absolutely. I'm with you. And then the last question I've got for you, Sawyer, is to go more positive here rather than talking about AI maybe
Sure.
taking your job. What are you most excited about with Tesla right now?
I still feel like the company is still in its early innings. Like I know that the EV growth and demand is down, but I really feel like these robotaxi and Optimus opportunities are so big and so strong, and that they are really going to change the world for the better. 40,000 people a year still die in the U.S. from car-related accidents, and so I think FSD is going to help immensely with that. I think Optimus will change the world in terms of, like, let's say if you're an older individual, you don't necessarily want to pay for a human to take care of you. You have an Optimus robot, either cook or do your dishes or laundry or whatever else. I think it's going to be hugely helpful for the world, and I don't think it'll be some like awful dystopian thing. I think it'll be a good marriage between AI and in the real world, and I don't think it'll go sideways like many predict it will.
Well, I like the optimism, and I'm with you. Yeah, I think I think we haven't even really figured out all the cool things Optimus is going to be able to do. But
No, yeah.
you touched on like home health aid stuff. My wife and I were talking, there's some news story not too long ago about how there's apparently like a mass shortage of people in that profession.
Yeah.
Where as the current generation ages, like there aren't enough people in those jobs to satisfy the demand and the need for that. So that's
Totally.
where Optimus wouldn't even be taking jobs. It would just be actually filling a gap of, what if Optimus could lift you up and place you in the shower or the bath, right? And if you're old,
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff like that.
I think in
we're
true
not even
Elon
thinking about.
fashion, it's probably going to take longer for these things to play out than a lot of us Tesla bulls hope it would. But nonetheless, I think it's coming. They're making meaningful and good progress on the robotaxi front, as we've seen in Austin. So I think it's a really exciting future. It's just going to take time.
Good stuff. Sawyer Merritt, you can follow him at Sawyer Merritt on X. the Tesla informant. I think that's better. I like tipster because it's the alliteration, but Tesla informant's probably, or informer,
Whatever works.
is probably more accurate. Sawyer, great to have you on. Great to get to know you a little bit better, and I'm glad my audience could get to know you a little bit better too. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I had a great time chatting with Sawyer, and I'm grateful to him for taking an hour out of his day, because I hope I didn't make him miss any breaking news on Tesla on X, because I guarantee he went right. That's probably the first thing he did, was he went right back to his feed to see if he missed anything while he was busy talking to me. So I hope that he did not miss anything while talking to me. But good stuff there. Hope you enjoyed it. And now we're kind of just winding down. This is the part of the podcast where I talk about what's going on with my car. And I realized I forgot to mention this last week with my own car. So I thought I'd bring it up here. And that is the summer update. So it was slow to roll out, but it definitely, well, this past week as I'm recording, but recently as you're hearing this, it did finally roll out wide with the Grok update and the light sync. And that's what I want to talk about. The light sync, I said on the podcast when I was talking about the summer update, 3-4 shows ago, that the light sync was the thing that I was personally most excited about. And now that I have it, I have to say, I really like it. I fully admit it's kind of cheesy, and I can see plenty of people trying it out, but just not liking it or turning it off after a little while. But at least for now, I'm going to rock this for a good little bit. And I have to say, I not only like the flashing of the music to the beat, but maybe even more than that, I like how it matches the color of the lighting to the album art for whatever song you're listening to. And it's really interesting to see what color it chooses on album covers that have more than one dominant color on them. And I have to say, too, I like it, and so far, I've really only driven with it during the day, where I can't even really see it. If I go under an underpass or something, I get a good look at it for 2 seconds. But I want to get some nighttime driving in with this, which I think as I'm recording this, I'm going to get a little bit of tonight, because I'm going to take my daughter out to dinner at her favorite place while my wife's out of town. So if any of you have tried it yet, I'd be curious to hear your feedback if you wanted to call into the Ride the Lightning hotline, or really, maybe it's doesn't even merit a phone call. You could just drop me a quick email or I was going to say Instagram, just social media message on X or on Instagram. But by the way, you can email me anytime, teslapodcast@gmail.com. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I can't guarantee that I won't get sick of it eventually. And one thing I do like, though, is if you do get sick of the pulsing light, you can turn that off, but keep the album art color sync on. So if you don't want the pulsing, but you still want the light to change color with every song, you can do that. So I can see myself, maybe I'll eventually go to that, but for now, I am very much enjoying the whole show that Tesla has put together for us with that accent lighting in the interior. How about an entertainment recommendation from me to you? Last night I finished watching the Billy Joel documentary on HBO Max. It's 2 parts. It's split into 2 parts, totaling about 5 hours. So it's pretty long, but I really enjoyed it. And man, what a career he's had. I've seen him twice. I saw him many years ago at this point, probably 25 years ago, on one of his Elton John tours where he and Elton paired up. And that was so long ago, it was when I still lived in Arizona. It was while I was in college. And then I saw him more recently with my wife at the baseball stadium here. We were so far away, and there was this guy just literally talking through the songs. Like Billy Joel was just the backdrop for his freaking conversation with his buddies. And it just made me, honestly, it ruined the show for me. That's my lasting memory of that Billy Joel show that must have been it was pre-pandemic, so I guess probably 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. But I hope I get at least one more chance to see Billy Joel. And really, I'd love to see him at the Garden, like on his home turf. You know, he did that 10-year run, the residency at the Garden. Anyway, that's we're not doing the music podcast here. Let's get back to Tesla. Here is your Tesla pro tip of the week, coming this week from Robert in near Philadelphia.
Hello, Ryan. This is Robert from near Philly with kind of a silly pro tip, I think. Don't know if anybody has phoned in with us before. I haven't heard it. So it has been raining quite heavily here in the Philly area. And twice I came out to my car, got in, and it said FSD was unavailable. And I thought, is it just because there's water on the windshield in front of the camera? And so I pressed the windshield wiper button, and the wipers went across the windshield, and suddenly FSD was available.
Thanks, Robert. Interestingly, I've never run into that, and I've definitely come out to my car being rained on plenty here in the San Francisco area. I mean, not this time of year. Summertime, it never rains, but wintertime, it rains plenty. But in any case, I can see how that would be frustrating, coming out to your car for it to immediately tell you that FSD wasn't available. I'm just glad that hitting the wipers once took care of it. So silly or not, it might help somebody out. So thank you so much for calling in with this one, Robert. I very, very much appreciate it. Now, if you have a Tesla or EV pro tip of the week, I would absolutely love to hear it. There are 2 easy ways to call in with it, or this also applies to just calling in with a regular Ride the Lightning hotline call, and I will get back to the hotline calls on next week's podcast. So either use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software, record your question, please, or pro tip, please try to keep it to 90 seconds or less so that I can get to as many calls each week as possible. And you can send that in to me via my email address, which is teslapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can send that same 90-second or less call or pro tip to the Ride the Lightning hotline by leaving a message on it. So you can call it anytime, 24/7. It's toll free, and the number is 1-888-989-8752. That number again, 1-888-989-TSLA. And by the way, if you know somebody out there with an upcoming birthday, anniversary, graduation, or some other special occasion, you can give them a unique gift of recorded voices from friends and family telling them why they're special. You can podcast those recordings or put them onto a keepsake. Visit lifeonrecord.com to learn more. Before I scoot out of here this week, a word from some friends of Ride the Lightning, starting with abstractocean.com. They've got a million great aftermarket Tesla accessories. Oh, and also Rivian as well. So check them out at abstractocean.com. The rear footwell lighting kits are popular, particularly with the Model Y, since the seats are on risers. There's also the tempered glass screen protectors made from Gorilla Glass that are custom fit to the Tesla screens. And for you Cybertruck owners, they have Expel custom fit, custom cut film pieces, wrap pieces in sized perfectly for the non-stainless pieces of the truck, the wheel arches, the bumpers, the tailgate, etc., all that stuff. So take a look, abstractocean.com. Click on whichever car you own, whether it's SX3Y, Cybertruck, Rivian R1S, or R1T. Pile everything you like into your online shopping cart, and when you get to checkout, use the coupon code RTLPodcast to get 15% off of your first order. That coupon code again, RTLPodcast, which is all one word, no spaces. If you need or want a front license plate on your Tesla, I do very much recommend the snap plate rather than the front plate mount holder thing that Tesla gives you at delivery, because Tesla's uses automotive tape to stick to the front of your car, to literally stick to it, which means if you ever want to get it off, good luck without any paint damage, and nobody wants that. So use the snap plate, which when it's on there, it's so clean and minimalist, the look. And if you want to take it off, it will leave nothing behind. But when it's on there securely. So I'm a big fan of these guys and what their product is here. They have 2 versions, the Snap Plate and then the stronger Snap Plate Plus. The regular snap plate is safety optimized with breakaway features to sacrifice itself in a worst case scenario like a parking accident or a car wash, while the Snap Plate Plus is strength optimized with hardened features for maximum strength. Both have the signature minimalist aesthetic that blends in beautifully with the Tesla front end. Both are made from recycled, made in the USA plastics with stainless steel reinforcements. They're available for all 5 Teslas that are currently in production. Yes, including the Cybertruck and including the new Model Y with its front bumper camera. They've redone the snap plate for the new Model Y so that the support arch, bracket thing doesn't obscure that lower front bumper camera. Immaculate Reflections, that is my detailer. That's who's taken such great care of both of my Teslas, and he can do the same for you. So if you are in or going to be in the greater San Francisco Bay Area with your Tesla or another car that you love, I cannot recommend enough making an appointment ahead of time with Immaculate Reflections for whatever is going to work for you. Whether you want to do paint correction to get the finish looking as beautiful as it possibly can. And by the way, a paint-corrected car looks so good. Ask me how I know. It is. It's just, man, when a car has been professionally paint-corrected by a pro detailer who really knows their stuff, just there's all those little imperfections and little swirl marks and even from waxing, it's all gone, and it's just like the clearest, most beautiful surface. So there is a summer special that continues to go on at Immaculate Reflections. $200 off any paint correction service, $500 off any ceramic coating package, and 15% off of any paint protection film package. Check out the website, irdetailing.com. You can also see examples of Immaculate Reflections work on Yelp or Instagram. The Yelp page is yelp.com/Immaculate Reflections. The Instagram username is Immaculate_Reflections. So again, check them out, irdetailing.com. And when you get in contact, just make sure to mention that you're a Ride the Lightning listener and you would like the summer special. One more time for my Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. That is the way you can choose to support what I'm doing here if you want to. I mean, it's totally optional. Obviously, the podcast is free, always has been, always will be. But your support really does mean a lot to me and to my family. And if just crossed the 10-year anniversary, if you've been listening for a while, man, $5 a month would go a long way towards helping me out. And $5 a month, in return for that, I will give you, as a thank you, early access to each week's episode, and you'll get an ad-free version of each week's episode, which means you won't hear this part right now. You won't hear me plugging the Patreon. So the $10 per month tier, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast at the beginning there, that's the most popular tier. That gets you the ad-free, the early access, and all of those weekly lightning round mini episodes that I do on Patreon. So again, check it out. I'd be humbled and grateful if you did. Patreon.com/Tesla Podcast, or just click the link in the episode description. And one more reminder about following this podcast. They don't call it subscribing anymore. Following this podcast on your favorite podcast service, just search Ride the Lightning Tesla on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on TuneIn, or on YouTube Podcasts. Then click the follow button, and that means every week when there's a new episode, you'll get a push notification, which means your device will remind you that there's a new Ride the Lightning. So it doesn't cost anything. It's just a nice convenience, and it makes sure that you are reminded of each week's new episode. You can follow me on X and or on Instagram, the same username on both, and that username is DMC_Ryan. And you can email me anytime for any Tesla or EV related stuff. My email address is teslapodcast@gmail.com. Finally, a big thank you and hello to the top tier Patreon backers at the Roadster in Space tier and the Maximum Plaid tier along with the grandfathered-in Plaid-level folks. You know what? I'll start with the Plaid-level supporters this month that are grandfathered in. They continue to get all the perks and bonuses that they should get for when the Plaid level was still officially part of the podcast, part of the Patreon, I should say. But thank you goes out to George Cassiopo, Logan Willis, Peter Chalet, Eric Randolph, Dory and Steve Guberman, the Tesla Owners Club of Taiwan, Ron Lee, Charlie Gillespie, Jeff Angwin, Chase Cabanillas, the Lydia family, Aaron Altschul, Jared Brown, Jerome Strack, Jamie Dalton, Mike and Barbara from Louisville, Matt Nixon, the Tesla Owners Club of Wisconsin, Ish, not Elon Musk in quotes, Peter, and the Bear Boys of Colorado. Next up, the Maximum Plaid backers. They are Jonathan Wales, Cameron Clark, Daniel Grummer, Seth Capello, Nick and Tony, the Galpin family, Ryan from New York City, Darren Nickel, Kaz Barnes, Patrick Wisniewski, Gil Cabrera, Todd Badger, Joe Edgel, Kevin Yank, the Tesla Owners Club of San Joaquin Valley, Will Stedman, Justin Perez, Jeremy Harris, Chris Beach, Tom Mills, Corey O'Donnell, Aaron, John Cody, Joel Sapp, Paul Casarino, Chris Osborne, KB, Adam Lavoie, Jason Chalukas, Travis Krenzel, Bruce Otterstein, Tom Behan, Josh Pennington, John from Cream Ridge, New Jersey, Dustin Hart, Derek Finley, Charles Clement, Damon Klein, Jeff Brown, Jerry Slinger, Clayton Goodfellow, Kenneth Corbett, Brian Bertoglio, Kim Bay, Troy Sievers, Nick Jacoby, and Chip Hooper. And finally, an extra big thanks goes out to the Roadster in Space tier backers who get all the perks and bonuses, including the shout out, including the monthly standing invitation to the monthly Patreon Zoom hangout, the early access, the ad-free, the weekly lightning rounds, and a one-on-one hangout with me each month if they elect to take it, as a few of them often do. So big thanks to Pete White, Lyle Austin, Steve Radspinner, Fernando Cordero, Lawton from Chicago, Sean Neidig, Neil Weaver, Jackson Wallace, Rolf and Jennifer Evers, Howard Anthony Smith, Victoria Iacovetto, Tesla Hitchhiker 42, Carol Weston, Robert from near Philly, American Home Contractors, Doug Carey, Michael Gallo, and Tony Figueroa. And that will wrap it up for Ride the Lightning episode 523. It'll be back to the normal business, normal format next week. But again, I hope you enjoyed this week, and I do thank you one more time for allowing me to step away with my family, take a little time away, just reset my brain. And I love doing this podcast, but I'm human. I do need a break every now and again. But at the same point, I do take my commitment to getting you a new episode every single week very seriously. So thank you all for checking out this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. And with that, I shall return next week. Happy electric motoring, my friends, and I'll see you back here in 1 week's time.
Elon Musk, people don't like Elon Musk. The guy founded PayPal and Tesla, and people are like, yeah, but he's a troll and a bad dad. I'm like, so was mine. He did nothing to fight climate change. Also, have you been in a Tesla? Have you been in a Tesla? My buddy let me drive his Tesla. I laughed out loud at how fast it went. Been clinically depressed my entire life, on dozens of medications, in a Tesla for 13 seconds, cured forever.
I mean, I think a Tesla is the most fun thing you could possibly buy ever. That's what it's meant to be. Our goal is to make it's not exactly a car. It's actually a thing to maximize enjoyment. It's maximum fun.